Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another Mattel Jurassic World figure, as we are taking a look at the newest release of the Mega Destroyers. This is the second of two different Mega Destroyers that are out currently at Target, which would be the Carcharodontosaurus, and now this really nice looking Stegosaurus with probably one of the most appealing paint schemes that I think we've had from Mattel so far when it comes to the various Stegosaurus figures that they do have out. As far as the box art and packaging goes, you can see it's your standard Dino Escape packaging, which, again, as I always say, is my favorite out of all of the packaging from the Mattel line so far. I just think it's absolutely fantastic looking box art overall. And then when we turn the box around, you can see the Stegosaurus loose and clearly on a rampage as that tail is swinging, but you can also just generally get an idea of what the figure looks like, as well as some of the action features, including the capture gear that we have for the Stegosaurus, which is really awesome because it's the first time we've had capture gear, not only for a Stegosaurus, but in general for a herbivore. This is the first time we've had any type of capture gear for a herbivore in the Mattel line. And then you can also see an image down here of the Carcharodontosaurus, which is the other figure in the Mega Destroyers line. So let's go ahead, break this out of its box, and take a look at it. So here is our Stegosaurus. Actually, let's turn it around the other way because that was the side that we got to see in the box. And then we also have our capture gear here, which is not currently put together. We'll have to just kind of slide that together to get an idea of what that looks like. There we have both together, and it looks super cool. Again, the Stegosaurus, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the most appealing looking paint scheme that we've had from Mattel so far. So close to kind of replicating the Lost World Jurassic Park Stegosaurus, which I really like. If we didn't have that brown on the underside and we just included that kind of creamy color, I feel like it would have been a pretty good interpretation of a Lost World Stegosaurus, but I actually do like that brown. Looking at the Stegosaurus, I honestly can't pick out any area, sculpt or paint-wise, that I dislike on this figure, so let's get a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Stegosaurus, one interesting aspect about this Stegosaurus to take note of right away is the fact that this is an entirely new sculpt from Mattel. Previously, we've just had kind of reused sculpts pretty much repeatedly from Mattel whenever it came to a Stegosaurus release, but this one is an all-new sculpt, and one of the things straight away that you'll be able to pick out that's different about this one compared to the previous releases is the mouth is open, whereas the previous releases have all had the mouth closed. So that is definitely one huge indicator straight away that this one differs from the others. However, you can see that there is no actual coloration for the beak. It's just the same primary green body color that we have, so I would have actually liked a little color variation for the beak, but it's not the end of the world. As far as the actual head sculpt of the Stegosaurus goes, it looks beautiful. Really nicely painted eye. The nostrils are sculpted out. The detail actually all around the eye also looks really quite nice. The texture in general to the face looks quite beautiful. I would say that this one actually looks a little bit more detailed than the previous Stegosaurus releases. Like the actual sculpt and detail just looks so much more vibrant on this Stegosaurus in comparison to the previous versions. You can see kind of like some hanging skin and stuff here on the underside of the throat, actually under the lower jaw, and then leading into the throat. You can also pick out in general kind of like the shape of the throat there, and that's really, really cool to see. Some beautiful scale detail as we lead back here into the neck of the Stegosaurus, and you can see as far as the coloration goes, we have that primary green body color as well as this kind of creamy sort of like a yellowish type of a color here, or like an off-white for the underside of the Stegosaurus. You can see the plates starting to pick up here on the back of the neck, and they are painted with a very nice brown. They are also beautifully detailed. Like you can see some incredible amounts of like cracks and crevices, and just generally the texturing to the plates, it looks beautiful. As we continue to move throughout the body of the Stegosaurus, this is another area that I feel like looks way better than the previous versions, as the actual very large scale detail of the Stegosaurus is just so much more vibrant than the previous releases. Like the previous ones look good, but I feel like when you compare the two together, this just looks so much better than the previous ones. The previous ones had almost a little bit more of a muted appearance to the scale detail, whereas this one just pops so much nicer, and you can see so much variation as far as those scales and the skin texture throughout the Stegosaurus. As you lead down here into that front leg, you can see some smaller scales picking up, and then it gets into a really fine scaling the further down the leg you go. You can see some very nice muscle definition as well as the elbow present in that front leg. Beautiful foot sculpt. Unfortunately, we don't have any nail paint, which is pretty common at this point. You can also take note to the ankle right there. There is also a speckling to the figures. We have kind of like a black speckling here and there, and you could probably pick up on that a little bit in this leg. As we move back up into the stomach region, you can see how the scales get smaller and smaller the further down into the body you get, and they get really fine once you reach the underside. You can also sort of make out the rib cage a little bit there, as well as, again, some nice color variation as we have the green. That then transitions to this kind of off-white that just kind of like leaks everywhere. And then we have this brown underbelly, which kind of leaks in reverse back into the kind of like off-white area. It looks really cool. I actually dig that coloration of the Stegosaurus quite a bit. You can also see some really cool articulation here in the stomach region of the Stegosaurus. And as you articulate it, you can see how the body moves out, but the coloration continues to still look really nice, like it doesn't disappear or anything. It definitely looks really good no matter how you look at it. The plates, again, look fantastic no matter where you look, and they almost have a little tiny hint of like a glossy look on some of them, which helps them to stand out quite nicely, but you can just generally see how beautiful they look as far as the detail goes. The texturing and everything continues to look fantastic as far as like the scale detail and everything down here into the body. You can pick up the hip bone there a little bit, and again, some beautiful muscle tone in the thigh. We start out with some very large scales up here at the top of the thigh, but they kind of differentiate the further down into the leg you get. They get a lot smaller, but then they pick back up again in the kneecap a little bit, but then they taper off into a smaller scaling the further down you go, down into the ankle, and you have, again, a really nice foot sculpt. There is a little bit of a glossy look to the nails of the feet, which is definitely a plus to kind of make it look like there's sort of nail paint, even though there really isn't. And then we lead out the length of the tail, and the tail looks fantastic. Again, we have two different areas of articulation out here, so you can see those joints right there. And you can also see how nice and smooth that tail articulation works. It would definitely be something that could potentially be pretty fun for like stop motion, if only you could like stop and pose it in that way. But it just kind of goes right back because it's part of the action feature. But you can again see the scale detail looks fantastic as we lead out into the Thagomizers. The Thagomizers are painted with kind of like a darker yellow coloration. They as well look really quite nice. The plates continue to look fantastic up here on the back of the Stegosaurus. You can see that the brown coloration, though, does taper off right here, and then we transition back to the green here for the underside. There is the Jurassic Facts app code if you would like to add this to your collection. And then if we turn it around, you can see that there's really no difference because, again, being an articulated figure like this, you're really not going to see much difference on this side, any more so than what you had seen on the previous side. But you can see that it just looks gorgeous from both sides. I'm definitely a huge fan of this Stegosaurus, probably my favorite Mattel Stegosaurus so far. I would say the detailing is just so much nicer on this one, and the paintwork is probably the most natural, I think, I've seen as far as the Stegosaurus goes from Mattel. And you can also see the underside looks really quite nice. Again, beautifully detailed from any vantage point. This is, in my opinion, the best Mattel Stegosaurus so far. And then we have the capture gear, and the capture gear looks pretty much just like all of the other capture gear did recently. Again, having that really nice metallic appearance to it. Really quite highly detailed, but not overly detailed. It looks pretty much like what you would expect from capture gear for a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World style dinosaur figure. So let's go ahead, take it down. We're going to attach it to the Stegosaurus and check it out from there. So as far as the capture gear goes, once it's actually applied, you can see it definitely looks cool. Again, I love the fact that Mattel has been applying capture gear to their figures. I really wish they would do that more often, and hopefully they continue it into the future. But once it's on, again, it looks really quite nice. But to activate the action feature, you have a plate right here that you're going to push down, which will cause pretty much the entire second half of the body to swing around and wave and, have like a tail attack feature. So let's give that a shot and see if we can break off the capture gear. Kind of. We didn't do it very well. It didn't work as well as I was hoping, so we'll try to apply that, give it another shot. So we'll hold the upper body here. There we go. It worked that time. So we can break off the capture gear. It definitely doesn't work perfectly, I will say that. It definitely takes some work. But again, if you're a dinosaur escaping capture gear, you're probably going to have to struggle a little bit. So in a way, the fact that it doesn't come off right away is a very realistic aspect, potentially, of capturing a dinosaur. As far as the rest of the articulation goes, we have some super smooth articulation here in the neck of the Stegosaurus. It definitely works really nicely. Like, you can see how nice it turns, and it can swivel all the way up if you want, but I really wish there was a little bit more mobility as far as like looking up or down. But, you know, it's still nice what we do have there. We also have leg articulation here in the front leg, of course, both legs. The articulation here in the midsection, which works really nicely. We also have leg articulation for the rear legs, which can also come out away from the body. And then 2 areas of articulation out here on the tail, which again is part of the action feature, which if we push this down, you can see how the entire second half of the dinosaur swings the tail and its hips and everything, and can definitely attack in a much stronger, more violent way than previous Stegosaurus from Mattel could. As far as a size for our Stegosaurus goes, for a length, you're looking at about just shy of 14.5 inches, or around the 37 centimeter mark. And for a height, the highest point would definitely be the plates here on the back. You're looking at actually just shy of about 6 3/4 inches, or around 17 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Mega Destroyers Stegosaurus. And you can see that although it is a new sculpt, the size remains pretty much the same as the previous Stegosaurus releases from Mattel, which is a good thing because that means you have a very sizable figure, as the Stegosaurus from Mattel are definitely larger figures, but it also shows you that there isn't a gigantic difference or anything size-wise, but absolutely a new and much more beautiful sculpt. And then for another comparison, here is one of the older Stegosaurus from Mattel in comparison to the newer Stegosaurus from Mattel. And again, like I was saying earlier, straight away you can see that the differences within the head sculpt are quite drastic. Of course, the mouth is open on the newer one, closed on the older one, but just generally the head shape and the detailing is really, really quite different compared to the, older release. If we come down here, you can see that the legs are actually in a different position, as the right back leg is trailing on the newer one, but it's leading on the older one. The front legs don't appear to be too different, but definitely not exactly the same. And then if we get nice and close and look at the bodies, although the older Stegosaurus absolutely had some really nice detail, I feel like the newer one is definitely more vibrant than the older one as far as the actual texturing to the body goes and the scale detail and everything. And you can even see, like up here in the plates, they're definitely different. And if we move out here into the tail, even looking at like the scale detail here, like if you look at the tip of the tail right here, like it almost gets a little bit muted as far as the detail goes right there. But if you look at the newer one, that is not the case. It's definitely, much nicer. So the Stegosaurus is a total resculpt, and hopefully you'll be able to see that here in comparison to the older Mattel Stegosaurus. So this Mattel Jurassic World Dino Escape Camp Cretaceous Mega Destroyers Stegosaurus, boy, he's got quite the name, is a gorgeous figure, and again, definitely my favorite out of all of the Mattel Stegosaurus. Like a very, very nice looking sculpt and much more appealing than the older ones. I think the only thing on the older ones that I might like a little bit better might have been the head sculpt. Like, I feel like I might like the head sculpt of the original Mattel Stegosaurus a little bit more than I like the head sculpt of the newer one, but it's not really a big deal. Maybe at some point, if I can acquire, more, I might be able to take one of the older one's heads and replace the newer one's head with the older one's head if it'll fit. I don't know for sure if it will, and then give it a repaint to look like the Lost World Stego. That's a pretty fun idea for a rainy day, but again, the Stegosaurus is gorgeous. The new sculpt is fantastic, really, really highly detailed, and definitely much nicer, in my opinion, than the older one. I love the new paint scheme of this. Again, it's probably my favorite paint scheme from Mattel so far for the Stegosaurus. Prior to this, I would say that my favorite might have been the grayish version that was in the multi-pack a little ways back. I believe it was a Camp Cretaceous multi-pack, but this is definitely my new favorite as far as the paint scheme goes. It's all really nice and natural looking in my opinion, and definitely looks great on the Stegosaurus. Of course, greens on Stegosaurus is always, one of my favorite things in the world, so it always looks really, really nice on a Stegosaurus and looks perfect on this. And I love the brown underbelly. Again, like I had stated, if that off-white kind of would have just run down onto the underside, it would have been a really nice kind of an interpretation of a Lost World Stegosaurus. But at the same time, that darker brown that they have there for the underside actually looks really cool. So I really cannot complain. Even though we were so close to having a Lost World style Stegosaurus from Mattel, I still think that this particular version looks fantastic. Maybe we'll get that Lost World style version from like an Amber Collection release someday, if they ever start releasing larger Amber Collection figures. This one also sports the capture gear, which I love. Anytime Mattel introduces capture gear to a figure, I am 100% sold, and that is exactly the case here with the Stegosaurus, especially because it's the first herbivore that has had capture gear, so that's even more so exciting to me. The action features and articulation of the Stegosaurus are also fantastic. I really love the way that they've articulated now half of the body to go with the tail, so it really creates a more powerful tail strike as opposed to the older ones where it was only the tail that moves. So that is definitely a plus, and all of the articulation is incredibly smooth on the figure, so that's also really, really good. So this Stegosaurus is definitely an awesome release yet again from Mattel, and I love the fact that they go the extra mile to make sure that we get something incredible by totally resculpting their Stegosaurus here when they really didn't need to, as they already had a really nice Stegosaurus sculpt prior to this, but this newest version is definitely superior, but showing off the fact that Mattel definitely takes some pride in what they do and really pulled through with this new Stegosaurus, a gorgeous, gorgeous figure. So if you are interested in this, make sure you head to your local Target and pick it up there, because that's where I found mine, so you should hopefully find yours there as well. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe before you do, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.